If you're trying to figure out which Linux distro to use in 2026, this video will save you hours of frustration, because the best distro depends entirely on how you plan to use Linux. I'm going to break this down into 4 real-world categories: beginners, power users, gamers, and servers. And by the end, you'll know exactly which Linux distro you should choose. Every year, people ask the same question: what's the best Linux distro? And every year, they get a dozen different answers, usually based on personal bias. This is generally a contentious topic because many Linux users feel so strongly about their favorite distro. In 2026, Linux is more polished than ever, but not every distro is right for every person. So instead of arguing about what's the best, let's talk about what actually makes sense. If you're new to Linux in 2026, especially if you're coming from Windows, Linux Mint is still the safest, least frustrating starting point. It easily falls in the category of it just works. It doesn't try to reinvent your workflow. The desktop makes sense immediately. Hardware support is excellent, and updates don't constantly interrupt you. Windows users have become traumatized by updates that break their computer, but Mint prioritizes stability by using a long-term support base. The Cinnamon desktop interface seems familiar and is designed to respect your existing habits and muscle memory. It has a recognizable start button on the bottom left for Apps menu. The taskbar is a traditional panel with pinned apps on the left, active windows in the middle, and a system tray on the right with clock, Wi-Fi, and battery. Side note, a cool feature of Mint is time shift. It takes snapshots of your system. If you change a setting and everything goes haywire, you can literally time travel back to yesterday and fix it in 2 clicks. This is great for beginners who love to learn by clicking. If you're moving from a Windows 11 system, which generally feels heavy or sluggish, Mint will likely feel like a massive upgrade. Faster boot times, snappier app launches, and generally better performance overall. Mint also avoids experimental features that can confuse new users, and that's a good thing. So, if you just want Linux to work, but you don't want to think about it, this is the distro to choose. If Linux Mint is a comfortable, reliable sedan that just gets you to work, then Fedora is a high-performance sports car designed for the person who likes to look under the hood. Fedora is the favorite of many software developers, including Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, and sysadmins, because it sits in the Goldilocks zone. It's more modern than Mint, but more stable than bleeding-edge systems like Arch Linux. For power users in 2026, IT professionals, developers, or anyone who likes newer technology, Fedora is hard to beat and simply a great option. Fedora sits right in the sweet spot. Newer software than Ubuntu, but without the maintenance overhead of Arch. Since Fedora is the younger sibling of Red Hat Linux, its security is top-notch. Fedora doesn't just protect you, it locks down the entire system using enterprise-grade tech, including the SE Linux enforcing mode. It's also one of the best ways to experience modern Linux technologies before it hits the enterprise distributions. Also, Fedora provides the purest GNOME desktop experience. Unlike Ubuntu, which heavily modifies the GNOME desktop with custom docks and theme, this means you get the desktop exactly as the designers intended, leading to fewer bugs and very polished, modern aesthetic that feels more like a cohesive OS and less like a collection of parts. And because Fedora usually has the most bleeding-edge updates, it also has the better hardware support in general. Now, Fedora isn't perfect. Updates are more frequent, and you're expected to be comfortable with fixing the occasional issue. It's basically the testing ground for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. But if that sounds exciting rather than scary, Fedora is probably your distro. But what if you're not coding? What if you're gaming? So, let's talk about gaming, because in 2026, Linux gaming is no longer a niche experiment. It's genuinely viable. And if gaming is your priority, Pop! OS is one of the best places to start. Pop! OS is based on Ubuntu, which means you get some massive software capability and long-term stability, but with some important improvements. Most importantly, Pop! OS offers an NVIDIA-specific ISO. That means graphic drivers are pre-installed and properly configured. No hunting down proprietary drivers, no post-install headaches. Steam installs easily. Proton works out of the box, and thanks to Valve's continued investment in Linux gaming, a large portion of the Windows library runs surprisingly well. Now, is Linux gaming perfect? No. Some anti-cheat systems still cause issues, and you may need occasional tweaks. But if your goal is to game on Linux without spending hours troubleshooting, Pop! OS is one of the smoothest experiences available. One area where Pop! OS really separates itself is gaming, and that's not by accident. System 76 has been intentionally designing this distro with gamers and creators in mind for years. Unlike many Linux distros that treat gaming as an afterthought, Pop! OS actively removes friction. The pre-installed NVIDIA drivers alone eliminates one of the biggest pain points new Linux gamers face. Even AMD systems are worry-free for the most part. They run the open source Mesa stack, which has matured dramatically, especially with Vulkan and Proton support. So out of the box, you're ready for Steam, Proton, Lutris, Bottles, Heroic Launcher, no weird tweaks required. System 76 also focuses heavily on performance tuning. The scheduler, power management, system defaults, all optimized for responsiveness. Combined with a clean GNOME-based environment and minimal background clutter, games get more consistent CPU and GPU access. And with Wayland improving frame pacing and multi-monitor behavior, Pop! OS feels modern, not experimental. Bottom line, if you want a Linux distro that feels like it was actually built for gaming in mind, not just capable of gaming, Pop! OS is one of the strongest options available right now. Finally, if you're running Linux for servers, whether that's a home lab, business environment, or production deployment, stability matters more than novelty. If you're deploying infrastructure in 2026 and you want stability, security, and massive ecosystem support, Ubuntu Server 24.04 LTS is still the smartest choice. Now, don't forget, this is 2026, so a brand new LTS is coming out in April. First, it's an LTS release. That means 5 years of official support from Canonical and up to 10 years with Ubuntu Pro. For production environments, that kind of long-term stability matters. Second, compatibility. Ubuntu has the largest ecosystem in the Linux server world. Whether you're running Docker, Kubernetes, Proxmox, cloud-native apps, AI workloads, or traditional LAMP stacks, Ubuntu's almost always the first distro vendors test against. Third, cloud dominance. Ubuntu continues to be the most widely used Linux distribution across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. If you're building hybrid or cloud-first infrastructure, you're aligning with the industry standard. Fourth, ease of use without sacrificing power. NetPlan networking, cloud init automation, unattended upgrades, strong default security policies. It's enterprise ready, but still approachable. And finally, community plus enterprise backing. You get the strength of open source development, backed by Canonical's commercial support if you need it. Other distros are great, Rocky, Alma, Debian, but Ubuntu Server hits the balance of stability, modern packages, hardware support, and ecosystem compatibility better than anyone in 2026. If you want predictable, scalable, production-ready infrastructure, Ubuntu Server is hard to beat. A few quick honorable mentions. Arch Linux. Fantastic if you want full control and ultimate performance, but it can be difficult to install and use, so it's not for everyone. Debian. Rock solid, extremely stable and reliable, but falls behind on the latest tech to keep that stability. OpenSUSE. Often forgotten, underrated but extremely powerful, and also definitely worth a look. So, here's a simple answer to what is the best Linux distro in 2026. If you're new to Linux, choose Linux Mint. If you're a power user, choose Fedora. If you want to game, choose Pop! OS. And if you're running servers, choose Ubuntu Linux LTS. You can always change your distro later, so what matters is starting with one that matches your goals now. So, if you like this video and you'd like to see more, please hit the subscribe button.